The Eastern Front was a place where ideas died fast. Tanks that looked powerful on paper burned within days. Strategies written in clean offices melted in the snow. Every army learned and adapted, but none adapted faster than the Red Army. And nothing proved that more than the machines that German crews began to fear above all others. The Soviet self-propelled guns, the assault guns, the tank killers, the Superguns. The story of these machines began with a simple problem. Soviet tanks were strong, but they were not enough. The battlefield demanded guns bigger than any turret could hold, guns that could crack open bunkers, guns that could smash fortified towns, guns that could punch through dense German armor at ranges too short for comfort and too long for survival. The answer was bold. Fix the gun in a casemate, remove the turret, save weight, lower the profile, strengthen the armor, and make room for the biggest barrels the factories could cast. The result looked brutal. A sloping armor plate, a massive gun jutting forward like a battering ram, a silhouette that became a nightmare for German tankers. One of the first was the ISU-122. Fast, low, simple, armed with a gun that could kill the early German Panthers at long range if the crew was calm enough to aim through fear. Many German soldiers first saw these vehicles as dark shapes hiding in tree lines, firing from ambush. Soviet doctrine instructed the crews to fire once, reverse, fire again, and then vanish. The ISU-122 earned respect because it fought like the forest itself. Quiet, sudden, deadly. But the war moved quickly. The Germans brought heavier armor, thicker fronts, sloped hulls, more aggressive tactics. Soviet engineers responded with the ISU-100, a tank killer with a gun so accurate and so powerful that German crews often mistook its hits for artillery. Veterans from both sides later said that the first time a ISU-100 opened fire, it felt like the earth cracked. The gun could reach out far. But distance was not always the most important thing. It was the confidence it gave the crew. They knew they could kill. They knew they could punch holes in Panthers and Tigers. They knew that when they fired first, the German tank across the field might never fire back. Still, not every enemy on the Eastern Front was steel. Cities stood in the way. Fortresses, factories, thick concrete bunkers. The Soviets needed something heavier. Something that could break stone as easily as it broke armor. Out came the ISU-122, armed with a gun that fired shells the size of tree trunks. When it hit a building, the building did not crack. It folded. Entire walls collapsed in clouds of dust and rubble. German soldiers often described the shock as a hammer hitting the earth. And then came the giants. The ISU-152. The ISU-122, the ISU-152. These were not machines built to scare the enemy. They were machines built to erase him. Their guns were originally designed for siege warfare, for breaking heavy fortifications. But the battlefield does not care about design intent. The first time a ISU-152 blew the turret off a Tiger, Soviet crews realized they had created something new. The ISU-152 earned a name that lived far beyond the war. The Beast Killer, the Zveroboy. It cracked open Tigers. It toppled Panthers. It shattered assault guns. German crews who had once felt invincible now felt hunted. Many veterans recalled hearing a strange, deep sound in the distance, followed by an impact so violent it shook their own lungs. That was the Beast Killer speaking. But what made these vehicles feared was not only the gun. It was the way they fought. They dug into the ground like claws. They let the enemy come to them. They waited in silence. And then, with one violent shot, they tore through armor that German engineers had promised would stop anything. ISU-152 could hit so hard that even a near miss could kill the crew of a German tank through sheer blast force. Urban combat brought out the worst in these machines and the best. In the ruins of ruined Polish towns, in the factories of Silesia, and in the broken streets leading into Berlin, these guns became mobile battering rams. German soldiers learned that if they heard tracks scraping over rubble and a deep engine growl behind a collapsed wall, they were not facing a tank. They were facing a building killer. The gunners inside these casemates lived hard lives. Their cabins shook with every shot. Their ears rang for hours. Their lungs filled with powder smoke. Their uniforms smelled of oil and steel dust. More than one crewman wrote home that each shot felt like being punched in the chest by a giant. But they kept firing. And when their engines burned, they fought on foot. These were not machines for comfort. They were machines for victory. As the Red Army pushed west, the German High Command began issuing special instructions. Crews were told to avoid certain angles of attack. They were told to engage from long range. They were told to retreat if they saw specific Soviet silhouettes. For the first time, German tanks were being told not to fight. That alone explains the fear these superguns created. In the final months of the war, many German soldiers believed the Soviets had endless numbers of these assault guns. They did not. The machines were expensive, heavy, and slow to build. But the Soviets used them with precision. They placed them where the battle mattered most: river crossings, road junctions, hills overlooking supply routes, streets leading to strategic buildings. When the war ended, many of these vehicles sat in silence. Some were kept as reserve weapons. Some became monuments. A few were taken apart for scrap. But their legend did not fade. Older German veterans could recall the feeling of dread when one of these guns fired its first shot, the way their tank shook, the way their confidence cracked. Stalin's superguns were not perfect machines. They were cramped. They were loud. They kicked like angry animals. But they were exactly what the Eastern Front demanded: simple, brutal, effective. And when they arrived on the battlefield, they changed everything. They broke the myth of German armor. They shattered the strongest walls. And they left behind a legacy carved into steel, stone, and memory. These machines were more than weapons. They were the answer to a war that demanded impossible firepower, and they earned every bit of the fear they inspired.